Welcome back to another great episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. Today we have Raffid Shidqi, who is going to be talking about his organization that is surrounding the pelagic fishery for thresher sharks. And we're going to talk about how he got started. He's got a very interesting start to marine biology. He literally fell into the program in his local university because he couldn't get to be a doctor. And so we're going to talk about adaptation, learning a completely new subject and the relevance, doing some internship, and that motivated him to do more work. Now he's got his own organization, employs 25 staff, all local to Indonesia. And now he's doing his PhD at Duke University. So we're going to talk lots about Raffid and his work, and I can't wait to start. So let's start the show. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. I'm your co-host, Andrew Lewin, here with my co-host, Dr. David Ebert. Dave, you ready to talk to Raffid about quite an interesting path into shark science?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've known him by name, but I've never really talked with him before. And definitely this interview was pretty fascinating. He definitely had, I say this a lot of times, but he really had a completely unusual path to getting to where he is now, doing a PhD at Duke University. And especially coming from a family where it was kind of like his parents were going like, why aren't you doing a medical field? So everybody should really you'll enjoy this episode today with Raffid. It was an incredible thing. And by the way, he's also one of the keynote speakers at this year's Sharks International. It's going to be in Colombo, Sri Lanka from May 4th to 8th. And we've been having on several of the people who have not been on the podcast before. There's 10 keynote speakers. 6 of them have been on the podcast before, but Raffid was one of them. Marta, Gofram, and Zoya have not been on the podcast. So we thought, hey, let's have them on the podcast.
Absolutely.
To share their story and get to know them a little better. So I really hope you enjoy this interview, hear about Raffid's journey.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. Before we start the interview, I think it's interesting to, a lot of times when people, from a young age want to be a marine biologist, right? And it's hard to get into a career or even education as a marine biologist. So oftentimes people divert from that original path. We talk about the straight linear path doesn't really exist.
Doesn't exist.
It's almost like a made up kind of thing. For some people it does, but not many. And we've proven that here with a lot of the interviews that we've done, with almost every interview that we've done with this podcast. But, it's never really I'm going to be a doctor. Now I'm going to become a marine biologist as an alternative livelihood or an alternative science. So I think it's an interesting way of approaching life, and the way that he adapted and is adapting and continues to adapt really makes it interesting to have this interview. So here's the interview with Raffid Shidqi. Enjoy, and we will talk to you after. Hey, Raffid, welcome to the Beyond Jaws podcast. Are you ready to talk about thresher sharks?
Yes, I'm excited.
All right. Let's do this.
Great. Well, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. We have another special guest today. We have Raffid Shidqi. And hopefully I pronounced that right, but he'll correct me in a moment if I didn't. Raffid is a PhD student at Duke University, and he's one of the keynote speakers at this year's Sharks International Conference being held in May of 2026. And as you know, we were having a series of guests on that are giving the keynotes this year, and Raffid is one of those species. Is one of those species. One of those guests that we're having on this thing. He's a different. We'll talk about his species in a minute. Oh, geez. Okay. Anyway,
You're good.
We're all good. He knows. And Raffid, in addition to working towards his PhD, he's a co-founder and director of Thresher Shark Indonesia, and he's an ocean expert. He's on the Ocean Expert Committee for the Department of the Environment, Food, and Rural Affairs in the United Kingdom. And has a whole host of other numerous positions. It would probably take me 15 minutes to go through every one of them. So hopefully we'll touch on a few of them during our interview here. He also serves as a field conservation officer, or he did, for the Manta Trust Indonesia, Guy Stevens and our friends there who've been on the podcast. And he's also a fisheries specialist for the United Nations Development Program. Raffid has received numerous fellowships and scholarships. I mean, it's an impressive record, and hopefully we'll touch on some of those today. It's amazing how much he's done in his young career so far. And he's received, again, numerous awards and honors, and he's been very successful in obtaining grants and funding, which is really the key everybody tries to do, but he's been amazing. Maybe he can give a little secret or spread a little pixie dust in our direction to maybe help us raise some funds too. He's been very productive in the last few years. He's got at least 10 publications that I could find. He did his Bachelor's of Science degree in Marine Science at the University of Jenderal Sodermir in Indonesia. Hopefully, I'm going to sound like I was close to it. He did an MSc in Coastal Science and Policy at the University of California, Santa Cruz, with Don Kroll. He's like the second one now that worked with Don Kroll, was one of his advisors. And as I've mentioned in our other interview with Marta Palacios, Don Kroll and I were cohabitated at Moss Landing Marine Laboratories back in the early 80s. We did our master's degree together. We were in different labs at the time, though. And currently, Raffid is doing his PhD in marine science and conservation at Duke University. And he's still, in addition to all of that, he was the co-founder and director of Thresher Sharks Indonesia, which I'm really keen to find out more about that. So, and with all that, Raffid, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the kind words. And I know that my undergrad institution is a little hard to pronounce. It's like local name. There's a lot of like local pronunciations in there.
Well, I did the best I could. Why don't you tell?
You did well.
Oh, good. Well, thanks. Better than I used to do. That's good to hear. So, we'll start off like we always ask our guests. Like, how did you get interested in marine science and sharks in particular?
Yeah, that's the questions that I always get whenever people ask me like why I decided to even pursue a PhD now in marine science. Funny story is actually an accident for me to get into marine science.
The best kind.
Yeah, I mean, like I got like very good grades in high school. I received some good accomplishment, and then my family is coming from this family of doctors and nurses. Mm-hmm. And in typical kind of middle income community in Indonesia, is that like, oh, if you want to be successful, then you have to become a doctor or like an engineer, like a very typical kind of Asian definition of success. And then my mom was like, oh, with this grade you should apply for medical school. And then my teachers at high school as well, like they said like, oh, you should apply to medical school. I did follow their suggestions. I applied to 6-7 different medical schools in Indonesia. It's one of the hardest institutions to get into, and it's also very expensive. I applied. I followed the suggestions, my mom's ambitions. I eventually did not get into any of the medical programs.
Wow.
It was like a really terrible experience, and I feel like I failed. Like I all of my grades were being wasted, and the only program that was open, there's only this one university that you mentioned, Dave. It's a university program with marine science undergrad programs. They're currently accepting, and nobody's actually applying. So it's kind of like almost an automatic entry. And then because my high school has kind of a collaboration with this school, with this university, they gave me like a special admission because of my grade and stuff like that. So there you go. I got into marine science. In the first 2 years, I really confused, and I don't really understand. Like, why am I studying an algae? Like a sea stars, like what is it for? I don't really understand about like why are we studying this? Because it's very ironic. Like during in elementary school, middle school, and high school, we know that Indonesia is a big ocean, island countries, but we never really told that the significance of the marine resources back then. So it doesn't occur to me that marine science becomes kind of like an important kind of subject. So in the first 2 years, it was really kind of like a terrible learning experience because I didn't really realize that all of this important and significance. But in third year, I eventually started to love it because I started my internship. I started to learn about the whales and all of this charismatic megafauna. I started my first internship with WWF in 2014. That was my first experience to be exposed in the shark science.
Did the university help you with that internship, or was that something you sought after, like outside?
It was, that was a good question. It was something that I seek outside because the university at a time doesn't have kind of like a conservation focus, so it's mostly on biotechnology and like oceanography. So it's physical oceanography, climatology, and things like that. So conservation was kind of like non-traditional route back then.
Right.
So I had to like really find opportunity for myself, and thankfully, I think at the time, like I've got some connections and really introduced me to this new realm of shark science with WWF. It's just kind of take off from that.
Was it?
So it's weird stories, yeah.
No, that's fine. I mean, this is what interests. I like this kind of stuff because there's a lot of internships out there, but sometimes they're very difficult to find. Sometimes you don't hear back. Was it something you just applied? Like you found it, you applied for it, and then you got it right away, or is it something that you had to do extra for, or take a long time to learn about it, or something like that?
Yeah, I think the good thing is that like NGO in Indonesia back then like was very open for students. So if you're still enrolling as an undergrad student, you will have the opportunity to get into that experience. But of course, that the process itself is very competitive. So I think at the time, like I was actually lucky. Somebody dropped off the position after they got accepted, and then eventually, like I got called. Like I remember it was like during the weekend. Like, hi, this is Raffid. Like or somebody that supposed to start the internship next week actually dropped out, and we have you as a backup. Would you like to join us for the internship? So I said yes.
What an opportunity.
So I think, it was, sometimes like I didn't hear back, but yeah, it meant to be, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's definitely, you definitely came to the field, like I'd say later than most people, Andrew, that we've had on the podcast. Most of them are like, by high school, at least, they sort of kind of know what they want to go in the marine sciences. So it was almost like because you got rejected from the medical profession that, the marine sciences kind of scored a coup. They got you on board. So
exactly.
Yeah. It was actually really funny because like when I got into like my mom gave up to me. It was like whatever program that is open for you, just apply. And then marine science was the only program. And then my entire family was like laughing at me. It was like, what are you going to do in marine science? Like, are you going to be a fisherman? And my mom has this like thoughts about like, oh no, you're going to be, gone to the sea for like a few months and then, fishing and then getting lost at sea and something, all of this kind of like, terrifying stuff.
As a mom does.
So I think that's kind of like reinforcing the idea of like, I don't even understand what am I doing in this program. Until the later year that I started to realize myself. So.
What part, can I ask what part of Indonesia are you from, Raffid? What part?
From Jakarta originally.
Oh, from Jakarta. Okay.
Really far away from the ocean. So I didn't grow up with the ocean. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Even though Indonesia is basically a lot of islands, you didn't really grow up there. That's saying something.
Well, I have to ask too. Like you. And I don't want to dwell on this because I don't want you to feel bad by any means because you've obviously pretty successful getting a PhD.
Thank you.
But it's a tough thing to do when you apply to like a medical program, something that you've grown up thinking, hey, you know what, I'm going to get into this. This is my path. Your family obviously is not necessarily pressuring you to do it, but is excited for you to do it and pushing you towards that way. And then you not get in. That's a pretty hard thing to take. And then you're going into this program that for you, and it's kind of funny because here for a lot of people, it's like you cross your fingers to get into these programs, but for you, it was open for you. But you're kind of like, oh, this is not what I wanted. I'm just going to do it because it'll get me where I want to go in terms of a degree. Was that a difficult thing for you to come around? And how long did it take before you really got excited about marine science?
Yeah, I mean, there is, I could remember, like, it was a really difficult year in the first 2 years, like, and the university was really far away from my home. It's like 12 hours away driving.
So you're staying over. You're
I'm staying over outside.
Yeah.
So that was actually my first experience being away from my family, not knowing anybody. So I had to like start over by myself, living by myself, making new friends, stuff like that. So it was a very tough, transition process into, a young adult as well. And knowing that I don't know what this knowledge gonna be useful for me, and things like that. But I think that I even like in my second year, like I decided to apply for a new university program. I applied for an architecture program. at a time.
Interesting.
You're
Yeah,
still trying to escape.
I'm still trying to escape. It was like, and I actually got into a neighboring university. There's like a way better university program, and I told my mom, I was like, "Mom, look, I got admitted into this architecture program." And then she looked at the admission cost. Is like, if you can pay, go ahead. And I was like, how am I supposed to pay? I cannot do this. And then I think that at the time, like, okay, I'm just gonna swallow and then just gonna accept my fate.
But again, like you laugh. It's kind of funny because we laugh about it now because we know where you end up.
Yeah.
But again, that's another thing where you're going into a very different, like thinking of going into a very different program. Mm-hmm. How was it? Were you just like very confused at everything? Because I would have been like sitting there like, where am I going to go with my life?
Yeah.
Like, and did you talk to any of your professors about it in terms of like what you can do? Like, how did that all kind of play out?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you probably went through this as well about like, being in this process of transition, a lot of confusions about myself, about like, kind of like, my self-confidence. It was really, I think, yeah, it was a difficult process. But I think throughout this 2 years, the things that I just realized is like, I got a lot of things that I overlooked. I made new friends that are really good. And because I'm trying so hard to get away from the program, I actually joined a couple of university clubs, debating clubs at a time, the English debating clubs. And I became active in many student activities that makes me kind of exposed to different kind of experience. I get some new friends from outside of my program that was very enriching, and a lot of these people are kind of like a support system that really helps me to thrive at the university. And I also really grateful that I had an undergrad advisor who really trusted in my capacity. Like we're still in touch, and he even provide recommendations for my graduate application and things like that. It was because like he was very, very have a faith in the success of my undergraduate program. I didn't have bad grades. I still get good grades because I'm just gonna try to make sure that I still can get out with something I can be proud of.
Of course.
Okay. You know what this sounds. And this is gonna be a way throwback movie for both you guys. Andrew's probably seen this maybe, but there was a movie that came out in '72 called The Godfather, with Marlon Brando and a young Al Pacino.
Al Pacino, yeah.
And
yeah.
And Al Pacino plays like. Have you seen that one?
I
you have to. You have. It's a classic.
Three of them. Watch the first two.
The third one's. Yeah, the first two are just great. But the first one, there's a point in there where the Al Pacino character, he's the son of the Godfather, and he has a line in there where he says, he goes, every time I want to get out, I get sucked back in.
Yeah.
And he goes, he kept wanting to get away from the family, and they kept sucking him back in until finally, at the end of the movie, he becomes the Godfather.
Yeah.
He takes over for his father. What you just described sounds to me like The Godfather. Every time you tried to get out of the marine sciences, we just sucked you back in.
It's a little different, and yours is a little safer. But
they were. Yeah.
It's not a mafia, but you're different. Yeah.
Well, some people call us the Shark Mafia, but
that's true. That's true.
So I mean, that's literally how that's popping in my head. Like, oh my god! And all you young people out there, if you haven't seen the movie The Godfather, go see it. The first two are just phenomenal, classic movies. So anyway, so you joined the mafia, now the Marine Science Mafia crew, and so because we keep sucking you back in. At what point did you kind of veer into? You got interested in the megafauna, like the marine mammals and the fishes, I assume as well. When did you kind of sway into like sharks?
Yeah, this is actually where things got really interested, because like throughout the process, like after the second year, you got exposed to more kind of like specialized coursework. Mm-hmm. So I learned a lot of things like conservation of marine resources, conservation of marine biology, conservation of marine biodiversity, marine biotechnology. So I learned a lot of all of this cool stuff. And then I actually found a pathway where I feel like, okay, maybe I can still pursue medical science through biopharmacology. Yeah,
You're
I
still
took a
trying to get
class.
out.
Yeah, I'm still trying to like be relevant in the medical science world, because I feel it's really cool to learn about like sponges and algae actually useful for production of antibacteria and antiviruses and things like that. So I actually started to be very passionate on that. In addition to learning about sharks after my internship with WWF, and I got introduced by the DNA research of sharks. At the time, I joined another internship in the next year with Indonesian Biodiversity Center. The name now Bionesia, that focus on the forensic research for shark trade at a time, because shark issues becomes very, very prevalent in Indonesia. And there's a lot of like research and funding coming in. It was my first experience doing DNA sequencing and all of this cool technology that I feel like, oh wow, like this is the medical science in a different world. So I feel like I got very passionate in there. And I decided to do my undergrad thesis on still on biotechnology and stuff like that. So I did research on sea sponges as anti-malaria. My life is literally in the lab. I go in the morning, isolate myself in this room with a pipette and like a gloves, and like until night, like I just stay there dealing with mosquitoes and extract the sponges. And there was like the realizations, I don't want to do this. Like I hate the lab work. I don't want to do this. And I had a different kind of undergrad thesis advisor at the time that we didn't really had a good experience working together. So I feel like I'm just gonna run away again. And there's this opportunity working with manta ray conservation with Lamakera project in Lamakera. So people like Sean Henrich and Manta Trust, Sarah Lewis, and I got to meet Sarah and also Mark Erdman, who two of the people that are still helping me in my professional career right now. I decided, okay, I'm just gonna finish this undergrad thesis as soon as possible, and then I'm just gonna join this internship opportunities. And I was presented in a completely different reality. I got into Lamakera, which is this small island community in the eastern Indonesia where people have been hunting manta rays for centuries. So people, do traditional harpoon fishing. They extract the meat for consumption and also the gill plates for, at the time, the traditional Chinese medicine demand. Because in 2015 and 16, the issues is still kind of like climbing up with the demand of shark products is really intensified. But at the time, like I just feel a lot of disconnect. Like in my undergrad degree, I study about this conservation, but all of that is focused on the ecology and biology of the species. And then when I got into the community and work with these issues of manta rays, I feel like none of my knowledge actually matters. Like, who cares about coral reefs? And people are just care about manta ray because it helps them to survive. They need the manta rays for survival, for food sources, the money to pay for their educations, and none of the knowledge that I learned over the 4 years actually relevant to this community. So it really kind of like opened my eyes about like, oh wow, the knowledge that I learned, there's nothing applicable when it comes to conservation, because a lot of the conservations that I learned from this internship with, Lamakera project was a lot about the complex political reality of people. So I started to gain this different experience about reality of knowledge that is not very compatible with the real life of people in Lamakera. Mark and Sarah at the time were really helping me to understand more about, how conservation can actually be something career-wise, is something that I can pursue. And I become very, very passionate about like, okay, so we understand that manta ray deserve some form of protection. But then conservation may pose some kind of, very difficult choice for people, because at one point you have to, cut off the supply of the manta ray products. But at the same time, you don't want to make you want to make sure that people are not socioeconomically impacted, because a lot of this practice actually it's part of the tradition. So they've been hunting these animals for hundreds of years, and then suddenly, there's some demands of conservation to happen in Indonesia. At the time in 2014, the national protection of manta rays takes place. It creates a lot of backlash within the community. I remember as recently graduated young people coming into the island, we had to be evacuated because we came there alongside the Ministry of Marine Affairs, who just come there to say hey, we just got these new regulations about manta ray ban. So basically manta ray fishing has been banned. But it's a very kind of top-down process. There's no consultation, so people are really upset. When I was there, people are already gathered outside of our house. They're really upset, and then we have to be evacuated through the back door, because people have already surrounded our the place that we stay. They said that they're really opposed conservation, and also because of the minister came to the island at the time. So yeah, it was a very difficult situations regarding conservation, because people resist, and they have kind of a violent intention to kind of hurt people who work for conservation. But I think it was really a difficult experience, but I think it really kind of sparked the questions within me, and even my PhD research right now is actually still trying to resolve that question, and partly what inspired the thresher in Indonesia as well. I'm a marine biologist by training. I study the sharks, but I realized that the sharks are important for conservation and for protection, for biodiversity, but at the same time, a lot of Indonesian communities are depending on them for livelihoods and for food. So how do we balance that issue to make sure that nobody's being negatively affected?
Now, why? Now, you're talking about manta rays there, but now you started your thing as the Thresher Shark Foundation. Now, why did obviously I know the Manta Trust is very involved there. How did you end up landing on thresher sharks?
Yeah, after my internship, I finished for about 3-4 months. I come back to Jakarta, looking for jobs.
The fun time.
Yes, the fun time. And marine science was not very popular back then. Nobody needs marine science graduates. I think a few months without jobs, and then my mom keeps when are you gonna work? Use your degree and whatever. And eventually I reached out back to Sarah, Sarah Lewis, hey Sarah, it's been really difficult for me to find a job. If there's an opportunity, I would like to come back to Lamakera and work. And Sarah eventually offered me two job positions. The first one is, and she was offering me immediately, there are two positions, one in Raja Ampat, for manta ray issues, and also in Roti, which is a new project that was just established. Roti is this southernmost island in Indonesia. It's really close to Australia, so it's a very, very remote place. Water is difficult. Electricity is sometimes there is electricity, sometimes not. And I immediately choose Raja Ampat because it's a no-brainer. Raja Ampat is one of the, everybody wants to go to Raja Ampat. And I spent for about 2 years there working on the issues. It's completely different. It's still conservation, but completely different issues. So Raja Ampat has been very successful in establishing the marine protected area, shark sanctuaries, and manta ray populations actually thriving there. But the issue is mostly related to tourism. So because the Indonesian government has been heavily promoted Raja Ampat as the sanctuary for manta rays, there's a lot of tourists coming there, and issues regarding over-tourism, and people, chasing manta rays when they're diving, and crashes of manta rays and the boats because there's no speed limit around the manta ray aggregation sites. So my role at the time, like just resolving those issues, working with the tourism operators and local communities who are managing the dive centers, to make sure that there's some protocol of sustainable tourism practice for manta ray diving. So I spent for 2 years, and I feel again like I think it's kind of like being a relatively young person, and Raja Ampat has been kind of like a very successful case study of conservation in Indonesia, or probably in the world. And the conservation initiative has been going on for 2 decades there. I feel not satisfied. Like, don't get me wrong, living there is amazing, and diving every day, and met new people every day.
Oh darn!
Yeah. and one time, we did this manta ray acoustic tagging with Mark and Sarah, and also one of my former coordinator, Eddie Setiawan, who's also a manta ray researcher in Indonesia. I told Mark at the time, I don't feel satisfied working here because I feel like my contribution were not that many, and I wanted to start my own work, but I don't really know where to start. And Mark told me oh, there's actually issue about thresher sharks in this island called Alor, which is in the East Nusa Tenggara region. He referred to the story of Sarah and also Sean at the time. They did an expedition in 2013 with a leaf aboard, Finnissy leaf aboard, and they passed through Alor. They saw there are several people actually fishing for thresher sharks. And then they saw there's actually a video that Sean released in 2013. I think it was a film for a CITES meeting, a COP meeting in 2013 to bring thresher shark into the appendix 2, I guess, at a time. So Sean was making some videos. All of these communities are landing thresher sharks, but there's no conservation organizations in the area, and frankly, there's no information about the thresher shark fishing practice. And it seems that people have been doing that for so many years because it's quite a unique practice. They use this fishing line, so they're about 4 to 5 hooks, a very large hooks. They stack all together, and then they put something like a chicken feathers and sparkling strings, and they put all of these chicken feathers in the hooks. And when you put that hooks under the water, and then the chicken feathers start, being hit by the current and stuff like that, it mimics a school of fish. Mm-hmm. And if you know the way that thresher shark fishing is to use the tail to slap it. Yeah, and then when they hit the hooks, the tail will get stuck in there.
Mm-hmm. So they go by tail first.
Yeah, they go by tail. And people have learned this practice at a time nobody knows about that practice. We start to discover the information after we start the project, and people actually shift it. So today they catch the thresher sharks, and then they cut open the stomach. They found there's some squids, meaning that there's a lot of squids in the ocean. So tomorrow they will use the sparkling strings because underwater it looks like squid because it's it's shiny and it looks like the movement of squid. And if tomorrow they saw some anchovies, they will use the chicken feathers.
That's
So
fascinating.
yeah, it's very fascinating. They shift the type of bait every day depending
Wow.
on the behavior, the feeding behavior of the sharks. Anyway, I think that at a time like the story about Treasure Shark was really intriguing, and Mark was like, "Go ahead if you wanna, start your own project." He said like, "I would be happy to fundraise some money for you, so you can do some basic survey about this information." And I was so intrigued with the idea. I was like, "Yeah, I would like to do that." And I actually reached out to my co-founder Dewi. She was my internship friend with Lamakera, so we did internship together in Lamakera. Dewi at the time, she was doing her master's at the University of Queensland. She herself also kind of like got into an accident to marine science because she did a chemistry undergrad, and she works in pharmacy, in pharmacy industry, and she hated the industry, and she decided like, okay, I'm just gonna go into marine science, and she did master's in environmental management and work with Mantray. But she was more interested in the idea of community development, and also conflicts related to human and wildlife and things like that. And we worked well together during the internship. And then I reached out to Devi like, "Hey, I have this idea about like doing a project. Do you wanna start doing this together, because like we both have the same interests and things like that." So we started to develop a new proposal to Conservation Leadership Program. So it's a consortium at a time, Fauna and Flora International, WCS, and BirdLife International. So they're based in Cambridge in the UK. So they gave around like 12,000 USD for 1 year project. Dewi and I just decided, invited two other people, Agustin and Eka. They're no longer with the project, but Dewi and I are still with the organizations right now, and we got the money. So with the help of Mark as well, and also Sarah, we got some input about how to make a good proposal and research design. And I think once we get the money, I think it's start kind of like take off from there. We discover some new some information. And the funny thing is, like when we first got into the island, it's kind of like an expeditions via land, really, like because there's some Department of Marine and Fisheries Affairs, and the conservation organizations that exist in the island was only WWF, who exclusively working on marine tourism at that time. When we got into the island, we did survey. We asked everybody, like, have you seen this shark? Have you seen these treasure sharks? And even the Department of Marine Affairs was like, nope, there's no sharks like this. Like, we've never seen that before. Like, nobody knows about it. And we asked also people from WWF, like, they've never seen any sharks like that. And the way that we discovered the village was because the person that did trip together with Sean and Sarah in 2013, the Finnissy owner, she already passed away, Patty, so she has a staff, and they told us like, oh, the village name is the village when the sun rises. They called it that, and they changed the village name like 3 years ago. So we tried to find where this village is. We go across the island for the entire day. Nothing we could find. And then at one point, like during the afternoon at 4 or 5 p.m., I think, we passed through this small village, and we saw literally two people are dragging the tail of treasure sharks on the shore. And that's where we started to like, oh my God, this shark is here, and then the village is real. Like, it's not a fiction village that we couldn't find anywhere. And yeah, I think that's where we eventually decided to like stay in the village and learn more about the people.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a very long story. I couldn't.
No, that's fine. Really... were the people welcoming when you found out?
They are, yeah, because at a time, like, our intention was just like we want to know, their practice, like how long they've been fishing the sharks, what was the motivation? Is it for subsistence? Is it for the fin markets or something like that? So it's a clear kind of like questions that we just want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want to do it anything regarding conservation. We just want
Right.
to understand what people are doing in there. And at the time, like we disguised ourselves as an undergrad student because technically Dewi is still doing her master's at Queensland. And I just finished my undergrad, like 2 years after my undergrad. I said like, I'm still at university. I'm doing this research, and they're happy to helping us.
Yeah, help a student out. Yeah.
Yeah, help a student out.
And these are all pelagic threshers, correct? You're working on.
They are pelagic threshers,
Yeah, okay,
yes, the
okay.
pelagicus. Yeah.
Do they get the big eye or any of the others the big eye at all or?
No, yeah, we just found the pelagic thresher
Just the
sharks.
pelagic thresher,
They're
okay,
doing it,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so you got this program going. I got to ask you, like, so how did you end up at University of California, Santa Cruz?
Yes. So we did the project for about 2 years, right? And this is where the reality about starting an NGO starts to become very difficult because, like, okay, we have this 12,000 USD for a start, and then we eventually finished the project, and we. With the help of Mark and Sarah, we secured additional funding for satellite tags. We just trying to understand the movement at the time, like, because this is the only opportunity for us to do the tagging, because we can ask people like, can you help us to catch the sharks, and we measure the whether the sharks they're being lifted to the surface can still survive or they died, and then eventually the sharks are actually pretty resilient. So after they're being, dragged up to the surface from the depth of like 200, 300 meters, we release them and they can still swim and then disappear into the depth. So we did tag one with satellite tags. It reveals very, very interesting movement. It was the first sharks that we ever tagged in Indonesia because the shark is very elusive. So it's not like manta rays, they're surface, and then you can just use some spear and then put some tags on the back of the manta ray. But this was the opportunity for us to study them. And Mark was really excited. He was like, it could be a lab for studying thresher sharks because you basically can catch them and tag them and release them safely. But I think like during the first and the second year, like it's just really hard to fundraise for the study about human interactions, because a lot of the grant landscape at the time were more interested in kind of like ecological research. So the money runs out, and there we finished her master's degree, and she started a new job at the time, and I didn't have a job. We ran out of the money, and even like during the project, like I didn't get paid. I just survived with the grant money because it can pay for my food and for my accommodation, but it doesn't pay my salaries. So like at one point I feel like, I need to survive too. Like I need to find a real job. Yeah, and eventually I landed this position with UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, as a fisheries officer. But it was a short-term program. And at the time, Debbie and I were thinking about like, okay, how are we going to continue this work with thresher sharks? Because we've been struggling to fundraise, and and we still have to do our full-time jobs, each of us. Like I think at a time, like, okay, you had your master's, so I think it's probably my time to do a master's. And I actually told Mark at a time, like, I don't think I will continue this thresher shark project anymore because, like, funding wise, it's difficult, and I think doing a master's probably a good opportunity for me. And usually Santa Cruz was the one that opens. and I applied for that one. I was waitlisted. I was like, oh dang, I didn't get into the program. And then eventually, I think a few weeks later, somebody dropped off, and then I got into a
Nice.
primary selection. It was like, okay, I got in. And I think during my master's, yeah, it's sort of kind of the stories really. And during my master's, like, I got exposed for the first time on theory about, social science and policy. And I started to draw from all of this field experience about, like, conflicts between livelihoods, survival, and the need for conservation. And during my master's, because the program is like 1 year coursework, and then the second year you have to do your full capstone. So it's practical. It's kind of like a professional degree, really.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of support from Don, from Anne, my professor, the director of the program, and professor at UC Santa Cruz are really, really kind and helpful. At the time, I was still thinking about, like, oh, maybe I should, like, explore something else. At a time, Don was actually encouraging me to look at other topics. So I explore other topics about, like, locally managed marine areas, or more kind of like social science direction rather than the sharks. And then I was like, I'm not really sure, like, what I'm gonna do. I don't know, like, my capstone project, what it's gonna be, because thresher shark project at the time, like, it's basically dormant. We don't have any money. We don't have any presence in the island, because both Dewi and I are already out of the island. Dewi in Jakarta, I'm in Santa Cruz. And at one point, Mark called me, like, hey, Rafi, we just secured this money to do some acoustic research and some satellites. I think he secured around like 80,000 USD or something. If you want, we can use the money for your capstone project, your master's degree. And I was so unsure. I was like, oh dang, I actually want to try something else. Now Mark got this money, and I have to go back to work with sharks. I was so torn. Yeah, and I told Mark, like, I don't know, Mark, like, I think I want to explore something else. Like, I don't want to work with sharks anymore, because, like, it's been pretty difficult with 1 year without any salaries. I don't want to get into that anymore.
Right.
And he was like, oh, but I get this money just so you can work on it. I don't want to take the money if you don't want to work with the project, because this money is practically reserved for your project. I was like, oh dang, okay. I guess, like, I mean it's a good problem, because, like,
Right.
I don't have to worry about funding anymore.
Oh yeah.
And whatever, let's just do it. And then COVID happens. But thankfully, I think during this COVID, I got to be in the island full time, and working fully with my project. So the entire year in 2021, while I was doing my capstone, we got a lot of momentum and stories about the sharks. The acoustic tags that we put on the sharks eventually produced a very exciting results, where the sharks, we found out the sharks actually quite resident to the area. And then from the satellite tags as well, the sharks actually go out of the island, but then go back to the channel where fishers are fishing them. And we have this conclusion about, partial conclusion about, like, and I forgot to mention that 80% of the sharks that are landed are pregnant. So,
Wow.
yeah, and we collected some data on the catches when we started in 2018, and there are 300 sharks that are landed in 1 year, and 80% of them are pregnant. An interesting story is that, like, when the sharks being cut, stomach, and they can find 2 pups inside. Sometimes the size already big, and then the children will go around the shore. They will gather when the father called, hey, there's some shark pups in here, and then the children would give some massage to the baby sharks, and then the baby sharks comes alive, and then they will release it.
Oh, wow.
So it becomes kind of like a practice that people are so familiar. They said like, oh yeah, it's actually pretty common for the children
Right.
to help massaging the baby sharks, and then they come back alive. And then we have this notion that probably it's an important popping grounds for the shark because it's a bay.
Yeah.
So if you look at the map, like it's a bay. So people fishing at the mouth of the bay, and we put some acoustic receivers in there, and it's true. Actually, we tag around 24 sharks. I forgot the exact. I think 7 or 9 actually resident for 6 months. So for the entire period of 6 months, they stay there. They don't go anywhere, and all of them are pregnant females that we confidently tag because it's big and the size and stuff like that.
Yeah. Now are you continuing this now that you're doing your PhD at Duke? Are you still continue to work with the thresher sharks as part of your dissertation?
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, the issue of thresher shark fisheries now, because of thresher shark Indonesia, we feel like it's quite successful because we started the intervention of alternative livelihood in 2021 after I finished from Santa Cruz. We got a lot of attention. Our acoustic tagging was very exciting, and people really drawn to the results of our research. And we got quite a lot of funding, and I got pretty smarter as well on how to write proposals. So I got a lot more confidence in fundraising and stuff like that. And we started the intervention of alternative livelihoods, and we cut down the fishing by 90%. So in our baseline, which we collected in 2018, fishers can land for about 300 sharks in 1 year, and after our intervention, there's only 50, less than 50 sharks being landed. So we reckon that the intervention works because people decided, okay, once they were being provided by equal livelihood opportunities, so some of them start a land-based business, like starting kiosks. They sell some goods in the village. Some of them decided to stay fishing. They fish for red snapper and tuna, and we provide some provisions like boats and stuff like that. And they feel like their new livelihoods provide some kind of equal income, or even better than the shark fisheries. And they decided to stick with it.
Yeah. How do you feel about being one of the keynote speakers at the Sharks International this year?
Honestly, it's I didn't really expect that. Like suddenly I got an email like, "Hey, congratulations, you got selected." I was like, "Well, as a keynote." I didn't really expect that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, congratulations on that.
It's a huge congratulations.
Huge honor
Thank
on that.
you.
Huge honor on that. So I guess where do you see your career going from here now?
Well, that is a difficult question. Because now with my PhD, I'm actually still weighing whether I want to get into academia or stay in more kind of like in practitioner route. I do love research. I really passionate about the topics that I'm currently working in, and I think I didn't get to answer questions about the research. My research about my PhD is now focused on manta ray. Back to Lamakera, when I first started about the issues of conservation. So the topic will be about, again, issues of livelihoods and conservation. But because conflicts has been very strong in the community, I'm looking for pathway of conflict reconciliation between people with different values. So how conflicts can be mediated between government, NGOs, and also local communities there. And that's kind of like the topic that I'm really interested in right now, and I feel like it's an area where Indonesia is so promising for academic research in that area. So probably I would continue to pursue some research opportunities. And at the same time, I'm really hopeful that I can continue as well nurture the organization, Raffid Shidqi Indonesia, that I have right now, because we have 3 different sites, one in Alor, one in Flores, now focused in mobile arrays, and the other is in Banda. And we employ now 25 young people to work. When we started, I cannot even pay myself. Now we employ 25 people, which is quite unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I think, and I think one that I feel really really optimistic was because all of those people, all of the people that we hired are indigenous to the area.
Yeah.
They're young, they're indigenous, and they started to see the value of conservation. Like on 2021, after I finished my master's, my dad eventually passed away because of COVID.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that was kind of like another turning point. Like, and my mom was alone in Jakarta. I was in Alor, and and my mom was asking me like, is it possible for me to come back to Jakarta and looking for a job there to be with her, because I have a sister, but my sister married and she lives really far away from my mom, and I have a little brother who's still in school, and she was asking me to be with her. And during that time, like I discussed with my teams, like I think we're just gonna close thresher Indonesia for good right now, because like it's just so stressful. Like I cannot be here, and I have to be with my mom. And the people, all of them crying, like they like they don't want the project to be closed, and they started to see the value of working. It's something that they really care about, and they say like it's serving their own communities, like the environment they live in, and things like that. So I think like the thing that makes me optimistic is that I want more young people to be involved. So I guess it's one way of how my career could be, could take some place as well. Like, I want to continue nurture the organization. I want to continue hire more young people, and kind of giving the skills that I've received from Santa Cruz, from Duke, so that these young people then who will take up the leadership opportunities later on. So that at some point probably they will not need me anymore, and they will become independent. So I think it will kind of like proliferate a more more generations of indigenous leaders in the area. And there's also the message that my professor at Santa Cruz, Anne, said like, if people has done something good to you, the way for you to pay it for, the way for you to pay it back is actually to pay forward to the next person.
Yeah.
So as to say that I think like I've received a lot of kindnesses from people during my master's and even right now during my PhD. I just want to make sure that that more generations of Indonesian conservationists could also receive that through me. I can open some doors for them, and they will do the same to others. So once they feel like they can give back. So I think it's kind of like giving this kind of snowball effect. So I guess those are the career that I kind of envision.
Amazing.
That's an amazing story, Raffid, and we really congratulate you on giving the keynote. And we'll definitely gonna have to have you come back on here and see how you're doing. If you definitely have one of the more unique stories of getting into the field. Like we kept trying to get out, and you kept getting sucked back in. And so
now you're gonna be training other people to be in.
Now you're gonna be training other people in the field. So we're gonna
trap them.
We'll have our eye on you, and trust me, you're gonna be back here at some point. Maybe you finish your PhD, and we're gonna want to find out how your story continues at that point in time. But anyway, thank you very much for coming on. And I'm looking forward. I'll be at Sharks International. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person and catching up and stuff. So anyway,
I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Raffid.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raffid, for joining us on today's episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. Dave, what did you think about this interview? I mean, going from, hey, I want to be a doctor to studying manta rays and starting his own organization, or, where they employ 25 people in Indonesia about pelagic thresher sharks. That's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, it was amazing. He definitely had a unique journey to get to where he's at. Going from, like I said, his family wanted to be going to the medical field, becoming a doctor and stuff, and he wound up doing sharks. And of course, I had to chuckle because he's another one. We've had Marta, who's on here as well recently. He ended up, one of his advisors was Don Kroll, who of course is a professor at University of California, Santa Cruz. And Don and I we did our master's together back at Moss Landing Marine Laboratories back in the day. And Don was actually a marine mammal person, and he still is, but somehow he's dabbled into the whole manta ray field and stuff. And it was just kind of a small world thing. And you realize how small our field is just in the marine sciences, and you realize, people you have on there, you would think you'd have no connection with someone
right.
in a different field, and here they are. So, Don, if you're listening, if we have one more student on here that you had, we're going to have you on the podcast to talk about something Chondrichthyan. I don't know what yet.
Figure it out.
We'll figure something out. Rafiq has a pretty interesting story, and I really hope everyone enjoys it today. We'll come back and talk about it afterwards. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was wonderful to be able to speak to Raffid, because such a young gentleman from living across the world from us anyway, coming over to the U.S. to continue to do some different things that are part and not part of what he does at the Thresher Sharks International. I think it's something. He's a co-founder. I should mention he's not the only founder, but he's a co-founder. But I think it's something interesting to see how he's, they're continuing to do these things, and he's changing the way people see sharks in Indonesia. Mm-hmm. I think that's, you look at this guy who set out to be a doctor, ended up being, and he'll be a doctor at some point, just a doctor of philosophy in fish doctor, and specializing in sharks. And I think it's interesting how you see career paths change. I coach girls hockey and at the U18 level, and a lot of these girls are going into university, and they have a set path. And I kind of tell them, I said, just be open to every path. Mm-hmm. Those who have like a set path that they want to go to, I'm like, it may not be what you expect to be. It might be, but it may not be where you end up. So just be open to new experiences, to new things. And for those who don't know what they're doing, I'm like, you're probably in a better situation, because you'll be able to be a little bit more open-minded in what you want to do. And I think that is a big thing. I went in, marine biology, science research. I thought I was going to be out in the field all the time and all that, and I did do that. Now I ended up in comms. It's not like a slight shift, but still a shift in terms of how you approach work-wise. What you're doing on a day-to-day experience, all that kind of stuff. So, and that shifts more towards what I like, and so you just never know what you're going to do. Raffid is a perfect example of that, and he's done a pretty good job. Not that I wouldn't say he wouldn't have been a great doctor, but he's done a pretty good job so far of leading this new generation in terms of what he's been able to accomplish for the shark species. So I appreciate what he's done. It was really great to know Raffid, and we're looking forward to having him back on to see what else he's up to throughout his career. So yeah. With that, we will send you guys off. We want to thank you guys for joining us. And if you have a great story, or you just want to listen to more stories and get in contact with us, Dave, how would they get in contact with you?
Lost Shark Guy on Instagram, Facebook, or just go through the Beyond Jaws YouTube channel or one of the podcast things, and just catch it and get a hold of me there. Also, San Jose State University, Moss Landing Marine Laboratories.
Perfect. And if people want to get a hold of the podcast in general, we're both on it at Beyond Jaws Pod for Instagram. And that's it for today's episode. Thanks again to Raffid for sharing his story. And we want to thank you guys. If you have any questions or comments, let us know in the YouTube comments below, or you can just get in touch with us, just as we said. And of course, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, follow on your favorite podcast app. And we want to thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Beyond Jaws podcast. From Dave and I, have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.